Hey BookTube, this is Top 5 Wednesday.
I got my ticket for the long way round.
I know I'm late on the Top 5 Wednesdays for this week, but I didn't really think I had anything to offer to the conversation for this week's topic, which is our top 5 things we were required to read in school. And yet, the more I thought about it, the more I thought, you know what? I do have some things that I think are important that really changed me profoundly in the way that I read and what I read. So I am going to share with you those things. Now, there are 2 honorable mentions, and they have kind of a story that go along with them, which is why they are honorable mentions. So I will start with the first one, and that is the book of Acts from the New Testament, from the Bible. Now, the reason this is significant is simply that I have been in Christian ministry since I was about 18 years old, which is a long time. And the book of Acts outlines the way that the early church operated, the way it all came together and the way it's supposed to happen. And that's my life, the church. So I have a lot of problems now with the church at large because I look at that framework and I look at what's happening today in America, and there's a big difference in the way it happens. But it changed my life profoundly because it's my life and it wasn't just a book. So that's my first honorable mention. My second honorable mention is kind of a funny story. My daughter Jenna just graduated from college in May with a BFA in creative writing. A couple of years ago, she came home for Christmas and she had to get some coursework done before she went back to school. And so she was doing this stuff and trying to write a paper. And she came to me and said, "Will you read some stories from this book," which is The Best American Short Stories, edited by Tom Perrotta. This is from 2012. She asked me to read 12 different stories and then spit back the synopsis to her so that she wouldn't have to take the time to read the stories and then write the paper. And I said, "No, I'm not doing your work for you." Jenna is my daughter that will either talk you into something or bully you into it. And the more she talked about it, she said, "You love to read. These are great stories. You would love it. Please, Mom." And I said, I caved. I said, okay. So I started reading, and I got about 3 stories in, and then I just kept going. And the reason it's funny is because not only did I not have to read this, I didn't have to read the one I liked the most, which I just read it and I was talking and I was spitting it back to her. She goes, "I didn't have to read that one." So funny. Now, the other reason that's notable to me is because I didn't realize who wrote it. Roxane Gay wrote it. It was called The North Country. And I don't know if it's an excerpt of another book or it's included in another anthology of short stories, but it's got a lot of themes of feminism and what you're supposed to do versus what you want to do and the way that doing it can change you. So that was my other honorable mention. Now for my top 5, I'm not putting them in any order other than chronologically because I can't tell you what I liked the most. I like them all the most because they're so unique in the way that they impacted me. So let me start with The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. I read this as a sophomore in high school. It's a short story. I don't know that you could call it a dystopian, but it is so interesting and impacting, and it's a look at the way that society can operate based on myth or belief, and it's kind of shocking, and it really opened me up to understand that adult fiction is amazing sometimes. Then I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. Now this was required for my freshman English class, which was notable because you were tested at the very outset, kind of in orientation as a freshman, and they placed you according to how you tested. I got into the top English class and it shocked me because here I sat with all these really smart people. Well, then we had to read this, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and did an exam on it. I knew I was going to ace that exam, and of course I did because I loved the book so much. So it ended up, I didn't feel so dumb after all. Now these last 3 I read most recently because I went to college the year after I graduated from high school. Then my life took a very dramatic turn in a very positive way, and I followed a different path. And then I went back to school 3 years later intending to finish, and for various reasons, I didn't. So I had those 2 years. And then about 6 years ago, my 2 eldest daughters went to college, and I went back with them. So I ended up finishing 2 degrees concurrently, and one is in interior design, the other is in fine arts. So these last 3 things were required reading during that time. First off was the Walker Brothers' Cowboy. This is by Alice Munro. It's a short story, and it introduced me to Alice Munro. I love her short stories. She's a Canadian writer, and she writes a lot about the Canadian prairie. This was just one of those things that introduced me to a contemporary writer. It's literary fiction, and I didn't know what that was, and I didn't know that I would love it, and I did. The next one was The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde. This is just delightful. It is such a funny story. I both read the story and then I also watched the movie, which is priceless. Thoroughly enjoyed both. I had no idea Oscar Wilde was the kind of writer that he is. And he has kind of a tragic story as a person, but as a writer. He had a very interesting perspective on society, and so he wrote from that perspective. And the last one was The Notorious Jumping Frog of Calavaras County by Mark Twain. I had no idea that Mark Twain was so funny. You know, and I even own Huck Finn, but I've never read it because it's big and it seems like a long story that I'm not sure I would enjoy. But, you know, I would because it's Mark Twain and he is hilarious. I love the whimsy. I love the comedy. I love the way it's laid out. I really, really enjoyed it. So those are my offerings for Top 5 Wednesdays, things we were required to read. If you've read any of these or if you had some required reading, I'd love to know what those were. This is such a wide array of things, and yet I enjoyed them all, which totally surprises me. Actually, it shocks me. It really does. So let me know. That's it for now for me. I will see you tomorrow, and thanks for watching.
When I'm gone, you're gonna miss me when I'm gone. You're gonna miss me by my walk. You're gonna miss me by my taco. You're gonna miss me when I'm gone.